to the larger Uranium One scandal?
Well, that's a great question, Kimberly. Yeah, it's very interesting. The Department of Justice is now asking for all the material the FBI has on Uranium One. It's important to point out, Kimberly, that this is an incomplete file. The Uranium One investigation was launched by the FBI in the summer of 2015. They asked in late 2016 for the Obama Department of Justice to grant them subpoena powers. That was turned down. That was reported on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. So what they're getting is essentially what the FBI was able to do without these very powerful tools. I think it's a great sign that the DOJ has requested this information, but we have to keep in mind that it's not a complete file, and hopefully they're not going to, base a decision on an independent counsel based on just an incomplete file, because I think a lot more investigation needs to be done.
All right. So, and what do you think in particular, about a special counsel overall when they get more information in? What's the likelihood there?
I hope that there's going to be more information found. Look, I mean, there's some basic facts in the reporting. The NBC News story, which I think was quite good, got some fundamental facts wrong that keep being repeated by Democrats and by some media outlets. Number one, the statement that no uranium from Uranium One has been exported out of the United States. That's a falsehood. That's a lie. The New York Times in 2015 confirmed that yellow cake was being exported by Uranium One out of the country. John Solomon and The Hill reported the same thing, citing Nuclear Regulatory Commission documents. So this information needs to be sifted, and you need to have subpoena power to look at Clinton Foundation financial records, look at travel records, and to start piecing together exactly what happened. And I think once you get to that point, you can say we need an independent counsel, or we need to have some other means of investigating this.
Okay, and then why do you think that AG Sessions, decided to reopen the investigation now? I'm just curious as to the exact timing.
Well, I think that's a very good point. I think part of it is there's been a lot of activity on Capitol Hill about Uranium One, and the Department of Justice, which is supposed to be investigating corruption, is a little bit behind the eight ball on this. You've got the Senate Judiciary Committee, you've got the House Oversight Committee, you've got the House Intelligence Committee, who are all investigating Uranium One, and the Department of Justice is behind. So I think part of this is they're feeling pressure from Capitol Hill.
Okay, and let's talk a little bit about the testimony that's been behind closed doors, and we've been covering it closely. Hannity has on this show, but Andrew McCabe, Bruce Orr, they testified. What do you think's going on behind those closed doors, and in terms of the content, the nature and the focus, the breadth of that information?
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't we love to know what that testimony was all about? I mean, look, I think this is very concerning to people. People get that people in the FBI are human beings. They have opinions. They have attitudes. But clearly, the opinions in this case of a lot of people at DOJ seem to skew in one political direction. And when you're talking about something as sensitive as an investigation of a presidential candidate in 2016, people have to know and feel that there's going to be equal weighting. And there doesn't seem to have been equal weighting. So I think we're going to hear a lot from members of Congress in that committee going forward about what the testimony was, and I think we're not done. I think we're going to expect to see more documents and more information on what precisely the FBI was doing.
Now, how long? Let's talk to me about the duration of this, like in terms of, obviously trying to build a case perhaps and acquire documents, perhaps get some people, whistleblowers, to come forward with information to be able to further the investigation in the interest of justice.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, look, with Uranium One, you have to consider that this is a story that starts in 2005. We already have the video testimony of the Kazakh uranium minister, Mukhtar Zakashev, saying that he was shaken down by Bill Clinton and then Senator Hillary Clinton to give this uranium to this Canadian company, which then sold it to the Russians. You have that. You have the flow of money, all this money going to the Clinton Foundation and to Bill Clinton's pocket with people connected to Uranium One. So you have this expansive time period, but really you're talking about a few actors. And I think from the standpoint of investigating that, if you have the right tools, which the FBI asked the DOJ for, it would not be that hard to figure out precisely what went on. And I think that's the next step.
It's so interesting because you look at that long time frame, and how about coordination and collusion there? in terms of these people working together. And I mean, this is really fascinating to me that why wasn't this looked at, during the Obama administration or prior, and then nothing while Hillary Clinton is, running for president of the United States, but yet they want to accuse President Trump of collusion in his transition team and do a gigantic document and wire grab of them without really any evidence to support it, and they've come up with nothing there.
Well, and Kimberly, I said at the beginning of this process they should look into the Russia question, and I think they've really come up with no substantial evidence.
Right.
But consider this: that Trump dossier that had all these allegations that didn't bear out. One of the things that dossier said was the Russian sources said they had a dossier that had damning information on Hillary Clinton. Mm-hmm. One of the questions I would ask senior FBI officials is, well, did you ever pursue that?
Right.
I mean, you pursued this information related to Trump. Did you pursue it as it related to Hillary Clinton? And I think most people would say, if you're going to investigate one, you should investigate both. That seems to be the best standard, I think.
Well, that is supposed to be. It's supposed to be fair and impartial and do a thorough investigation, regardless of political persuasion or ideology, unless you have an invested interest in a determinative outcome. All right, thank you so much, Peter. Appreciate it. And here with more reaction
Kimberly.
tonight are Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton and Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. Good evening to you. So, Greg, get you to comment on some of this in terms of what the information that we just heard from Peter and where the investigation stands and where you think it could go.
If top people at the FBI were capable of protecting and absolving Hillary Clinton in the email case, notwithstanding overwhelming evidence of crimes, aren't they also, Kimberly, capable of protecting her in the Uranium One case? It's a crime to use your office to confer a benefit to a foreign government in exchange for money. It's wire fraud, it's mail fraud, it's bribery. It could even be money laundering if you're using a foundation as a receptacle of that money. It's all kinds of anti-corruption crimes. And it's not the first time that she's been suspected of this. She's also been accused of helping UBS avoid the IRS, and simultaneously, her husband receives $1.5 million from UBS and a tenfold increase to their foundation. AP did a study, and they found that half of the non-governmental people who gained access to Hillary Clinton donated lavishly to her foundation. If she was peddling access, isn't she also capable of peddling influence?
That is such a good question. I mean, when you learn about this, Tom, and you just see the tentacles that really suggest, corruption and collusion. And again, this is an ongoing investigation, so we have to see where it goes. But we do believe in our system of justice and that an investigation should not, like I said, determine an outcome because they wanted to be on the side of the Clintons.
Well, the Justice Department and FBI were ruined under President Obama, Attorney General Lynch, and James Comey. There's no doubt about that. Compare and contrast how they handled the dossier last year with the Uranium One and the pay-to-play allegations with the Clinton Foundation. Reportedly, according to Fox News, Andrew McCabe talked about how the FBI worked so hard to verify that dossier and run it all down. Of course, they really couldn't verify it, but they worked hard on pursuing it. Now, what's going on with the Uranium One allegations? FBI agents at the line are seeking permission to get subpoenas out so they can pursue leads, and they're being told no. So you've got suppression of a Clinton investigation on yet another matter.
Unbelievable.
With this over-the-top attack, because this is what the dossier was. It was a Clinton attack, a Clinton campaign-funded attack on President Trump that the FBI took like a baton from the Clinton camp and ran with. It's really extraordinary. I hope these line agents that the Justice Department are talking to have whistleblower protection.
Exactly.
Because, given the leadership there at the FBI now, frankly, they're going to have targets on their back, politically speaking, in terms of their careers, for speaking out. It's a serious situation. And the idea that you're going to let, again, the bureaucracy figure out whether the bureaucracy should reopen this investigation, I'm not confident the right decisions are going to be made in the long run, but who knows? Yeah,
very interesting. And Greg, talk to us a little bit also about the juxtaposition of, these two investigations. It's just unbelievable. It's unprecedented.
Well, one is beginning to wonder, given the paucity of evidence of collusion with Trump and Russia, there seems to be a plethora of evidence of collusion between Hillary Clinton and her campaign and the DNC in Russia.
Certainly.
You know, it's a crime to pay a foreign national, including a Russian, money for information on a political opponent during a campaign. And if you're not honest about it in your financial filings under the Federal Campaign Finance Act, that is also a form of money laundering. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, all of this is very suspicious activity. But, you know, I agree with Tom that it's all going to come down, I think, in the end, to the dossier. That may be the biggest smoking gun of all, because it looks like the FBI and the Department of Justice were engaged in nefarious activities to fool a FISA judge, to falsely get a warrant, to spy on a political opponent, Donald Trump and his associates, and it was all being funded by Hillary Clinton's campaign and the Democratic National Committee. Did the FBI know that? I suspect so.
Well, that's such a pivotal question, isn't it? What did they know and when? If they took that and acted then in bad faith, like you said, to achieve some nefarious ends because they didn't want President Trump to become president of the United States, then candidate Trump, they were spying on his family. You had Don Jr. testifying, and of course leaks coming out from Schiff right away about that testimony, but no one seems to want to complain about that. I mean, it's unbelievable how unfair and imbalanced this is in terms of what went on, and just the absolute missile-lock focus to try to create the air and idea of collusion and corruption and coordination with the Russians, and not one scintilla, Tom, has come forward from that.
Oh, that's true. I mean, we've uncovered documents showing that Hillary Clinton, through Bill Clinton, received $500,000 from a Uranium One firm connected to the Russian government. Moscow. He went there to speak, got $500,000. It wasn't to the foundation. It went into their bank account. And then the Clinton campaign paid someone to go to Russia to talk to Russian intelligence to dig up dirt on Donald Trump. You know, by the standards that Mueller has presented in terms of reasons to investigate someone, certainly there ought to be a special counsel looking at what Hillary Clinton was doing in terms of getting money with the Russians.
Absolutely.
And then working with their intelligence services to figure out if there was dirt to be gotten on her political opponent.
Yeah, Greg.
You know, increasingly, almost day by day, the shape of a plot is beginning to emerge.
So true.
That people were determined for political reasons to absolve and exonerate Hillary Clinton, to clear a path for her to become president, and at the same time launching a fictitious investigation without evidence of Trump-Russian collusion in a political campaign, which, by the way, there's no statute that prohibits that sort of thing as long as money is not exchanged.
Correct.
So, you know, were they trying to frame Donald Trump while exonerating Hillary Clinton, and was all of this for political reasons and evidence be damned? It sure is beginning to look like that.
Yeah, and just, you know, an improper, acquisition of FISA warrants, and misuse of the judicial process to be able to achieve a desired political end. I mean, this is what the height of corruption, all prosecutable. So this investigation, we're going to be talking about it for a while. The
FBI is unaccountable, really, in many, and has been for decades. And quickly, they can get away with doing things, and then when they're asked by Congress, they say, oh, we can't talk about it, it's classified, or it's a pending investigation, both of which are canards in these circumstances.
But we have to find out, and, you know, to be fair, you know, Tom, just real quick, we have to find out specifically who are the bad apples there, because, you know, for the majority, the rank and file of the FBI agents, men and women that serve, are outstanding. I don't like what I'm seeing there on the top levels at all, and I don't like the sort of the relationship between Mueller and Comey and McCabe, and I mean, it's just, there's a huge problem there, and hopefully they're getting to the bottom of it in this investigation. I'll give you the final word.
Yeah, I agree. And we need to clean house at both agencies in terms of folks who were responsible for what went on during the prior administration and well into this administration. But we've got to get the information out. There's no excuse that we still don't know these key answers about who paid for the dossier, how was it used, what was in the FISA application, information about the FBI texts and other issues like that. We're still fighting about the tarmac meeting that went on between Clinton and Lynch.
Remember that?
What's the holdup?
Grandkids
the agency's got to be transparent and hold people accountable.
Yeah. All right, well, it's going to happen. we're just going to keep after it till it does. What a pleasure to have you both here tonight, Tom and Greg. Thank you, my colleague.
Thank you.
Coming up, Congressman Ron DeSantis is demanding answers over a new report about the Obama administration ignoring Hezbollah's criminal activity in order to secure the Iran nuclear deal. The congressman, he is here next. Plus, reaction from Herman Cain and Matt Schlapp. Stay with us. Welcome back to Hannity. Congress is demanding answers tonight after Politico reported, quote, in its determination to secure a nuclear deal with Iran, the Obama administration derailed an ambitious law enforcement campaign targeting drug trafficking by the Iranian-backed terrorist group Hezbollah, even as it was funneling cocaine into the United States. Republican Congressman Jim Jordan and Ron DeSantis are following up on that story by sending a letter to Attorney General Jeff Sessions. The congressmen are asking the Department of Justice to turn over all documents and communications related to this matter to find out whether the Obama administration did this to help secure the nuclear deal with Iran. Joining us now with more on this request is Congressman DeSantis. A fascinating story and so disturbing at the same time. Congressman, how do you anticipate the DOJ is going to respond to your request for documents and information?
I actually expect them to respond favorably because this is an important issue. And if you go back to the second term of Obama, remember what Ben Rhodes said?
Yes.
The Iran deal is the Obamacare of the second term. Everything was subservient to that. They did all kinds of things to get that deal through. Obviously, they told a lot of falsehoods to the American people in the process. This thing with Hezbollah, who, by the way, has American blood on its hands. They're one of the most lethal terrorist groups in the Middle East. You go all the way back to the Beirut bombing of the Marine Corps barracks in 1983. Hezbollah was the perpetrator of that. So they've been wreaking havoc in the Middle East against our allies, against the United States for decades. And to make a conscious decision to ward off a very sophisticated task force that was pursuing them, knowing that that would allow their drug running and money laundering operations to continue unabated and therefore empower Hezbollah, that is a very monumental and I think disastrous decision. We need to know what happened. We need to know who told them to stand down. And then we also need to get some of the architects of the Iran deal, like Ben Rhodes, and see were they involved with having DOJ shut this down.
You're so right. I'm glad that you followed up on that because Ben Rhodes, you know, all roads lead back to him because he's got the answers. He's the architect of that. It sounds like from his own words, his own admission, he's making himself an ideal subject of an investigation to comply and come forward and proffer some testimony to explain exactly what transpired.
And remember, he bragged about creating a fake echo chamber where he had client journalists that would put out disinformation about how this is really capitalizing on an opening of the Iranian regime. They're going to change and become part of the community of nations. They knew that wasn't true. They knew the mullahs weren't changing. They just thought that giving them $150 billion as sanctions relief, airlifting over $1 billion to them in cash, they thought that that was good, and that was the policy that they pursued. I think they pursued it recklessly, but by this investigation, we're going to find out just how reckless they were in doing that.
Yeah, I just question that policy. I question its merits. I question its authenticity, the whole nexus of it, how it came together, and what exactly did they think that they were accomplishing? Was this just some kind of like ego trophy to say they could do this nuclear deal? Because it was a bad deal for the United States, and now we know just how bad.
I think it was exactly. They wanted to hold up the New York Times the next day and say, oh, we have this great deal, peace in our time. Consequences be damned, essentially. And if you think about the deal, they never did anything to prevent Iran from developing ballistic missiles. That's not in the deal. Nothing about Iranian support for terrorism. And of course, we don't even have access to Iran's military sites in this deal. So it's really a deal that empowered Iran immediately and then paved the way for Iran to develop nuclear weapons in the near future. It was a disastrous deal, but then you also see now some of the consequences of that and the collateral damage by empowering Hezbollah. And I think if you ask somebody like Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel, yeah, he's worried about groups like ISIS, but I think he'd probably point to Hezbollah as the most significant terrorist group in his neck of the woods.
Absolutely, and he also tried to point that out at the time when he was stating his objections to the United States making this move, because he knows full well who better than he to determine and decide exactly what's going on in that region, especially based on their excellent intelligence gathering. We already know it. We knew that was a bad deal at the time, but nevertheless, it was pushed forward, and now we're finding out the ramifications of it. It reminds me of the Fast and Furious and cover up there. I mean, it's unbelievable because it just seems that they had a specific political goal in mind and acted against the best interests of the United States and supported essentially terrorism with Iran and Hezbollah and funded it.
And probably on both ends, by having the DEA stand down, that empowered Hezbollah on the front end. But then when they're getting the pallets of cash on the back end of the deal, well, why do you think they want the cash? Because they want to give that to the Revolutionary Guard Corps. They want to give it to groups like Hezbollah so that they can continue to wreak havoc in the Middle East. So it was a disaster from the beginning to end.
You're absolutely right. Well, I thank you for your service and what you've done here, and I look forward to finding out the rest of this information. So obviously we need you to come back a lot. Congressman DeSantis, thank you so much.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. And joining us with more reaction, Fox News contributor Herman Cain and chairman of the American Conservative Union, Matt Schlapp. How much do I love these two guys? I got to tell you, I was very excited. You could tell by the way I said your names. All right, so Herman Cain, 999, right? Maybe the public would understand that benefit. It's unbelievable, taxes. All right, so let's talk about this. The Obama administration, okay, they gave a free pass to Hezbollah. But should there be a very thorough investigation because of this? Ben Rhodes and all the rest of them.
There absolutely should be a thorough investigation. And this isn't the first time that the previous administration deceived the American people. But it is the first time that we have this kind of evidence that Congressman DeSantis and others are uncovering that tells us there are some rats in this. We just don't know exactly how many, and we just don't know how deep it goes. I'm glad that they're doing this so that they can continue to try to unfold what the truth is. But certainly, we know that this is leading to a bad place for the previous administration, and Iran has never been our friend. They acted like Iran was our friend, but they were never and never will be our friend.
I mean, state sponsors of, terrorism here in terms of Hezbollah, very deadly, very dangerous, very much still alive and active, okay? Because, thank goodness President Trump followed through on all the campaign promises to crush ISIS, okay? But now look what we did. We gave money that ended up going directly to Hezbollah. I mean, this is insanity, Matt.
Yeah, it is insanity. And the money part of this is a really big part of this, Kimberly, because obviously the money went to all the things that is not in the interest of the United States. I think the important thing here is the Democrats will say, oh, this is all political, and Donald Trump and the Republicans want to relitigate the scandals of the past. But what this is let's keep it in focus. The Iran deal has been decertified by President Trump. Thank God, another campaign promise kept, as you said. But yet it is still operational in many ways, and it's very important that the American people understand how putrid and polluted the whole process was by which Obama bent down and took a knee to the terrorists across the globe, to the mullahs, to the Castros in Cuba. He gave away to the store to all these American haters, people who undermine our national security. You know who he was tough on, Kimberly? Catholic nuns. People who wanted to live their faith in America. He had it all wrong. And I think on this Iran nuclear deal, we have to go to every length we need to make the American people realize just how terrible and corrupt it was.
You're absolutely right. And thank you for acknowledging the nuns. I am a product of the education of a Catholic school and the Sisters of Mercy.
Me too.
So
Me too.
There you go, right? So, okay, so Herman, where do we go from here in terms of this? Because it seems like we're shedding a lot of light on it. There's going to be some transparency, but some people are going to have to come forward and testify, like Ben Rhodes, the architect of the echo chamber, because the media at the time, he was making fun of them, saying that they weren't going to investigate or write about anything. We just, give them what we want them to say. Wow.
Yes. Here's where we go from here. Congressman DeSantis and his committee need to continue to push the issue. That's number one. Number two, when they continue to push the issue, more and more will be uncovered. Now, the reason that this waited this long before it was uncovered is because the liberal media was complicit in exposing this. The American people are not stupid.
No.
They smell the rat from the beginning, but the media did not want to uncover this, so they just sort of ignored the story. And Matt is exactly right in terms of what's coming out. So where we go from here, keep digging, keep investigating, and keep trying to tell the American people the truth. We don't know all of the facts, but we do know that there are some rats in this whole deal.
Oh, that is for sure. And I love he pays respect to the American people, the smart voters out there who said they had enough of this corruption and inside dealing and not acting in the best interest of the United States with these deals or, you know, for funding terrorism. It's unbelievable, Matt.
Yeah, Kimberly, I think the one critical thing here is that Congressman Jim Jordan and Congressman Ron DeSantis are bulldogs and they're heroes, and they're going to pursue this aggressively. What happens to a lot of these courageous congressmen is sometimes people who are more senior in the Republican conference, they get nervous about too many investigations. They get nervous about looking like they're being political, going after people like Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. And I say to all of those Republicans, you owe it to your constituents, you owe it to the American people for them to understand how seriously corrupt these deals were. I want to know the truth. You want to know the truth. We want to know what happened here. And on all these investigations about Hillary Clinton, about Uranium One, about the emails, about all the corruption of the FBI and Loretta Lynch's DOJ, Obama's DOJ, we need the answers. When we get the answers, we can close the book, and the American people will deal with the politics. But if you don't get the answers, it makes people hate their government even more.
Yes, and, you know, and President Trump, look, right away acting with, you know, speed and clarity to undo some of this mess with the nuclear deal, with the Paris Climate Change Accord. One bad deal after the next. It's against American interests, against American jobs, and against our economy. I've had it. All right. Herman Cain and Matt Schlapp, thank you so much.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Coming up, with new Democratic scandals mounting, the left is now lashing out at Republicans for exposing them. Tammy Bruce, Larry Elder, and Dan Bongino join us next. Stay with us. Welcome back to Hannity. As the left's Russian collusion narrative collapses and scandals involving members of the Democratic Party continue to mount, liberal lawmakers and their allies in the media are lashing out at Republicans and others who are exposing them. Watch this.
Their attacks are not based on fact or logic. This is a hatchet job, plain and simple. The concerted campaign to discredit him and his investigation in the right-wing media is nothing more than propaganda and disinformation to try and turn the public's attention away from the real investigation.
We're witnessing a concerted, coordinated effort to try to undermine this entire investigation, from Mueller to the FBI to the Department of Justice, to make this all seem as though it's a corrupt enterprise.
Well, hear me out here. It seems to me that they're just throwing whatever they can, like monkeys, throwing poo against the wall.
These are actions that the White House wants them to take, that Steve Bannon wants them to take, but are enormously destructive of our administration of justice and of course, a major distraction from the Russia investigation.
This hearing is part of an ongoing Republican attempt to divert attention from the real investigation into the collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian government.
All right, and joining us now with reaction, Salem Radio nationally syndicated host Larry Elder and Conservative Review contributing editor and former Secret Service agent Dan Bongino and Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce. First question, Tammy, why do they always have to bring the monkey cage into it? Like, that was a little bit crazy.
It's like that's the most they can think of. This is hysterical, isn't it? And look, it's awful things they're saying, but what it really highlights is literally a meltdown. They don't know what else to say. It was a great day for not just the president, but for the country yesterday. It highlights what the Democrats have not been able to accomplish for at least 8 years. So there's a real meltdown. And this is this equivalent of like complaining about, poor Bob Mueller is the equivalent of saying that this tax and jobs bill was going to be Armageddon. It's as ridiculous, as ineffective. And of course, this is on the heels of all of these other remarkably, well, like the remarkable Politico story. You've been hitting all the marks tonight. Obama and Hezbollah, Ben Rhodes wishing that, saying that he wished to see the obits of Pence and McConnell and Ryan in public on Twitter saying effectively he wants them to die. This is an admission by the left that they have failed completely, and all they have now is hysteria.
I mean, real hysteria, like, you know, get some serious counseling, but Obamacare is not going to help you.
A few meds.
Exactly.
Nice.
All right, so Larry, do you agree that the left's attack on the GOP is seriously just a distraction to avoid all of these numerous Democrat scandals that we've seen in the news?
Of course it is. I guess I have two reactions. Let's remember how they treated Ken Starr. I remember James Carville said,
yes,
I hate Ken Starr. I hate him. And this is America. You ain't got to love somebody if you don't want to. I hate Ken Starr.
Right.
They called him everything but a child of God. And it's not as if critics of the Mueller investigation don't have merit, for crying out loud. What about all these appearances of impropriety? You've got staffers on this investigation that have said horrible things about Donald Trump, apparently involved in the GPS matter without telling other people. There are legitimate reasons to question this probe. When you have lefties like Alan Dershowitz and Jonathan Turley, two prominent left-wing law professors, also questioning the integrity of the investigation, maybe, just maybe, there's something about the integrity of this investigation that deserves questioning.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Dan, I know I've seen you on about this a lot. I mean, field day, right? Unbelievable.
You know, Kim, I'm tired of this, man, and America should be too. The Democrats get away with everything. And then what do? They turn around and they go to their media sycophant acolytes and they say, hey, please run cover for us on this fake Trump-Russia fairy tale. Remember, the Democrats are the party of IRS targeting, Fast and Furious, the sale of uranium to supposedly the most dangerous enemy in American history in the Russians. And now we find out from a Politico story by Josh Meyer, potential international gun running and drug dealing by Hezbollah, while the Obama administration is alleged to have looked the other way. And we're supposed to get all hot and bothered about a Trump-Russia X-Files, Gillian Anderson, David Duchovny conspiracy theory that not a human being's produced a scintilla of evidence about. I'm sick of these jokers, and everyone else should be too.
It's absolutely right. You know, Tammy, that's total corruption of the judicial process, misuse of FISA warrants, going to judges to try to achieve political and ideological ends, to try to specify who would be in the Oval. That's what they tried to do. They tried to predetermine it, and then you have people like Peter Strzok saying, oh, it went an insurance policy, that they were all in to do this.
This was, of course, their presumption. It was their sloppiness was born out of overconfidence. They presumed she would win, and they got a little nervous, so they wanted that insurance policy, but they felt comfortable, Kimberly, to be as sloppy as they were because they felt the system would, in fact, make this happen. This is what's so shocking about what the American people did last year and why they can't adapt. This is their issue. And also, I would say that for when it comes to the Republicans, I appreciate, you know, congressional investigations. There's a place for those. Clearly, if there was ever a special counsel required, it's regarding the Obama and Hezbollah connection, as well as Uranium One. Now, I know, again, Sessions is looking into the FBI dynamic with Uranium One, but these are crimes that are actually kind of so shocking. We're still trying to get our mind around them, but these are the things that they knew that they would need to cover for. This is what Ben Rhodes is still shocked about. They did things during the 8 years, and this is why, by the way, do you remember after the election, Hillary strangely apologized to Barack Obama? And I wondered at the time, they hated each other. Why is she apologizing to him? Because they knew what would come out as a result of her failure, and that's what we're dealing with right now.
Well, so there's the corruption and collusion, Larry. Feast your eyes on that. It's all over with them.
And my column that came out today, Kimberly, was about what would happen if Obama had spent the first 10 months of his presidency battling charges of collusion, because apparently somebody in his campaign took a meeting with somebody who had opposition, dirt on his opponent. And for 10 months, Obama has been fending off accusations that he really didn't win the election. No, it was a collusion between him and Putin, and that's what got him the election. Can you imagine what the Black Lives Matter people would be doing, what the NFL players would be saying, what the Congressional Black Caucus would be saying, what the NAACP would be saying? They'd be screaming how racist this probe is, talking about how lame it is, that initially it was about collusion, then they couldn't find collusion, and then it was about lying to investigators, and now it's about obstruction of justice. This country would be on fire. So I asked my friends on the left to just imagine what things would be like if the same situation were done, except take out the word Trump and put in the word Obama. And tell me honestly how you feel about this probe.
Can I just add very quickly?
Real quick.
This is the Republicans have got to be aggressive on this. They've got to be extremely aggressive. They can't just put it into the hole of the congressional investigations. This is outrageous.
Yeah,
and if the Americans see this being passed off, we'll have a crisis of trust again in the government.
All right, just got like a couple seconds left, Dan, to be fair to you, because they savaged an American family, great business people, and tried to undermine a duly elected president of the United States with this false corruption collusion hoax against them.
Kim, I think you're going to find out in the coming days and weeks that this special counsel has been a cover because they lost their insurance policy, which was Hillary Clinton in office to cover their misdeeds. This is their misdirection now, the special counsel.
It's all coming out, folks, right? All right, Larry, Dan, and Tammy, what